Hi everyone. I hope you're having a pleasant time. I'm here to talk to you today about the community organizing framework in a little bit of detail. Back in 2013, alongside a few other colleague community organizers and some of the people who created the community organizing program funded by the national government in the UK, we created an organization called Community Organizers Limited at that time. And so through community organizers, we brought together all the knowledge, all the experience, all the learning of the community organizing training program in all of our work as community organizers in the ground. There were 500 community organizers. And through that process, we created this community organizing framework to help us understand and help us train people in community organizing. And so, as you can see it on the screen, the community organizing framework has eight different, I wouldn't call it stages, they're rather eight different particular points, particular spaces or places to consider. It's not a linear process. Whilst this demonstrator is shown in the images here as a circle, it's not a circle. The one doesn't necessarily always just follow the other, um, but it can at times. But also at times you can jump from reaching to listening, and then just move straight from listening into leadership, and then from leadership move back to connect, and then from connect move into strategy, and then action, and so on. So this will vary. This isn't a one size fit all, and you must just be aware of what's the situation you're working under, what's the community you're working with, and you must also be aware of what is it that you're trying to achieve, what's the purpose that you're working towards. Okay, and so if you want to find out more about community organizers, you can visit communityorganizers.org.uk, and you can find out more about community organizers as an organization and the work that the organization is doing in the UK. And so, as you can see, at the center of this whole framework is power. Through community organizing, what we aim to do is to support everyone's ability to act, help people to build their collective power so that they can overcome social injustice and build community, and work together to shift and share power, to create transformation, to make changes that benefit people within the communities that we're working with and we're working for. And so, the first thing that you want to do when you're organizing is you want to start by reaching out, getting out there and finding the people who you're trying to engage, not waiting for them to come to you, but actually going to them. So in order to do that, you need to first define what's the community that you're working within. So what's the sort of community that you're going to be working with? Is it a community of interest? Is it a geographical community? Is it a community of defined by characteristics and so on? So you must first define this. So let's say you're working within a geographical community. So what are the boundaries of that community? Okay, how do you define that community? Because the boundaries that a council, a local government defines a community by is not the same boundaries that a community can see itself, see itself having. So you want to first define in a sense, you're defining the scope of your work, the scope of your intervention. What's the community you're working within? You want to understand who are the people that make up this community, and you want to understand where you find them. What are different types of people within this community, and where do you find them? How do you reach out to them? And very important, you must go to where these people are. Don't just wait for them to come to you. You must reach out to where they are. So once you've defined where you're going to be working, you want to move into listening. Once you're in the stage of listening, what you want to do is work a set of open-ended questions, which can help you to understand what people's life is like within this community. Okay, what people's experience of this community is, what are the challenges that they find on the way, um, and but also what is it that people are passionate about? What is it that people care about? What is it that people love about the area where they live? If we're talking about geographical community, if we're talking about community of interest, what is it that they like about this community that they're part of? And you want to build on that, on the positives, but you also want to make sure that you go into the negatives and try to understand what are the challenges that people are facing within this community. And you want to try to understand what are the ideas that people have to create change, to create that change that they want to see happening within the community. The listening process is not just about gathering ideas in community organizing, it's all about gathering leaders, okay? Because the idea is not that you as a community organizer, you're going to go off and do things for people based on the results of your listening. The idea is that you're going to listen to people and you're going to challenge them into action. You're going to challenge them to do something themselves, okay? And so the idea is that as a result of your listenings, you begin to gather some potential leaders, okay? Some people who are interested in making some change happen. It may be that they're not interested in the same sort of change. It may be that they're not interested in the same sort of issues. But within a system, everything can be connected. And so we want to find these leaders, and we want to begin to work with them. We want to connect these leaders and make links between these leaders, okay? Um, in that process of listening, you're gonna identify leaders. You're gonna identify people who they deeply care about issues, but they're not ready to lead. Okay, you might find people who uh, care about issues, but not so much. They're not willing to lead, and they might not necessarily engage in activities that your leaders will get on with. But they might be people who, at some point, will be of some support. You may be able to mobilize them into actions. They may be able to find you some connections. They may be able to connect you with other people. They may be able to support in some other way the initiatives that come up later on. So it's really important in the listening process that you really gather data. You make sure you have people's contact details, and that you really begin to map out who is who within this community, what their interests are, and what the level, the potential level of involvement might be. You then connect people. You connect the leaders. You connect people who want to be involved. And you try to create spaces where these people, as individuals, and to create some sort of bond that is not just about the cause that they all care about, but is a more human bond. This can often be done through storytelling and creating spaces where people share the stories, share about themselves, share about their lives, where people connect with each other, but also where people begin to speak of move from those one-to-one listenings earlier on into group listening. Okay, so we move from defining a community to then listen to individual members within that community one-to-one, and then we move into listening to people in groups. Following listening to people in groups, where we would have identified community resources, needs, visions, we would have shared stories, we would have begun to build some bridges between different groups of people who might, in some cases, not necessarily connect with each other on a day-to-day basis. You begin to organize them. You begin to understand what is it that this group cares about, or what are the kind of subgroups that I can begin to identify. And how is it that I can support those groups to begin to organize themselves into to have some sort of structure. It could be that they become a constituted organization which has a particular purpose, has a constitution, has a set of rules, and so on. Has a body of directors in some way. Has a chair, a secretary, treasurer, and so on. But that might not always be the case. That might not always be necessary or actually useful. In some cases, you may be working with people who are just a group of people with a passion. They care about something in particular, and they want to work together. But they don't necessarily want to constitute themselves because they might consider that bureaucracy might get on the way of the actual work that they want to do. And in many cases, I've worked with groups that have gone down the line of constituting themselves before getting any action done, before doing any actual work, and then they've just burned themselves out with bureaucracy, basically, and with paperwork. So as you begin to organize people, they might decide to be a loose group, a loosely associated group. They might decide to become community interest company. They might decide to become a charitable organization or a volunteering group. They might decide to set up a private enterprise, which is going to actually create a business plan that's going to help them to create that change that they want to make within their community, and at the same time make a few bucks for themselves. as they change the world. Nothing wrong with trying to make a living out of making the world a better place. And so, on that basis, then you begin to move. You begin to move forward through that whole process of organizing people. You begin to identify the leaders of these organizations, the leaders of these groups. You begin to offer support, and you want to make sure that these are organizations that work with participatory leadership, so that they do not become stagnant. They don't become dependent on an individual or on a couple of individuals that are always doing everything, getting the work done, and just reporting to everyone else. You want to make sure along this whole process that people are given the chance to host meetings, to facilitate them, to work on the publicity for the various events that they might want to organize, to do the cooking, to do all the various activities, and to move from place to place, doing the various activities that are being done, so that it's not the same person always bringing the food, it's not the same person always chairing the meetings, it's not the same person always doing the publicity, it's not the same person always applying for funding bid. And that means that we're actually building everyone's capacity to lead and everyone's ability to lead. And in doing so, you'll have some hiccups. You will find that things might get tricky, because we're allowing people to develop themselves, and that can be a difficult process for people who are experienced and could see a better way of doing things. But we must allow people to find their own way of doing things, and groups to find their own way of doing things, and help to unlock the potential that every single human has to be a leader. So we must create a culture of possibility where people believe in their ability to create change, but also culture of possibility where people believe in each other's ability to lead, to create change. Um, there will be natural leaders that you will find, and there will be people who may not seem like they have the ability to lead for whatever reason. Maybe they have too strong of a character. Maybe you think they're too quiet. Maybe um, they're controversial. I don't know. There might be many reasons, but the invitation here is to allow everyone the opportunity, and to go beyond our assumptions around who people are and what people are and so on. And you'll be surprised, quite often the loudest person, the one who speaks the most, who knows the most, is not necessarily the right leader for a group. But actually the best leaders within a group will be people who have a heart, who work with the heart, the head, and their hands as well. They don't just think. They actually get things done, but they also have a lot of empathy for other people. They have a lot of space um, for people to talk to them, to listen to them, to try and understand them, and so on. So we also then need to support the groups that we work with to generate some sort of strategy. So in the process of generating a strategy, remember I was telling you this is not a linear process. You might then realize that what you're trying to do requires other people who are not on board just yet. And then you might need to just go back out and listen again and identify some new people. You might find out that you don't have the information that you need at this point to get on with setting up a campaign, setting up a project, setting up an event, etc. And you might want to go back out and listen, or you might want to go back out and reconnect with some of the people you listened to before. So we need to begin to identify what are the hot issues that this organization is gonna be working with. Now you must bear in mind there's a difference between a problem and an issue. And a group might care about global warming, okay, but that is a problem. That is an international problem. That is a huge thing. Now, an issue is a way of breaking down a problem into smaller chunks. So, whilst global warming might be a problem, you might consider an issue that fits within global warming. The fact that in your city all the buses have really old engines and they create a lot of smog. Okay, you might consider one of the issues of global warming to do with meat production. Okay, but even you could go even lower and start to consider global warming, and how one of the issues is how people are buying food from supermarkets and this food is coming from really far away. Okay, and so you wanna begin to break down what a problem is, what you see as a problem that people care about, into smaller issues that are winnable. Okay, so that we can build our strategy in small steps We want to work on the issue of global warming, but we do it one step at a time. We do it slowly, okay? And so through this process, we use stories and information to identify issues. We analyze the information that we have from the listenings, but also information that is out there from other people who have done previous research. We can also look at what other organizing groups have done in the past, and then we need to agree on some tactics and some targets, and also try to find who are the allies that we need. So for this, we do something that we call a power map. Okay, and if you want to find out more about power maps, we'll be doing other videos that talk about power maps and what they are and how you do them. And obviously through Inside Hub and Community Collab, we provide training on all of these various topics. And so when you create a power map, what you're doing is you're identifying within an issue that you've decided to organize around, what are the stakeholders? Who are the people or organizations with most power within this issue? Who are the people or organizations with least power? Who are the people who oppose or who think that this issue matters? Who are the people who think that this issue doesn't matter, is not important, it may be important, but it's not a priority. And then you begin to map all of these people within your power map. It looks a bit like an axis, and so through that process, you can begin to understand who is it that you can generate some alliances with, so that you can use your collective power to get things done. And so, in this process, it's really important that you really think about root causes in why. So, why the issue is happening in the first place, so that you try to create a root solution rather than bring a solution that is going to be temporary. Okay. Through your listening process, as well as through your process of connecting leaders and connecting members of the community that are willing to do something, to get on with it and take some action, you also want to be asking this why. So people tell you the issue that they care about, and why does that matter to you? And then they explain to you why that matters, and why do you think that something, why is it that is really important to do something right now, and so on. And you just keep on asking the why question until you try to in order to get some more clarity, to gain information. Organizing is all about depth, yeah. Mobilizing is all about breadth. In this case, we're trying to get to the depth of the problems, but we're also trying to really build people's capacity to think critically and to also challenge each other and challenge each other's ways of being, but doing so in a respectful way. And so, in this process of generating a strategy, it's really important to just make sure that you work on having the right people in the room, so that you have all the information that you need in order to create your strategy. And that sometimes involves bringing people in who you might see as people who oppose what you're trying to do. But this really helps you to generate as much information as you can to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. And so hopefully this leads to some action. You want to make sure that these actions that you take, actions that are collective, are actions that are happening around the issues that people care about the most. You want to make sure that you're using all of your resources within this action. When I talk of resources, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about people. I'm talking about organizations. I'm talking about what you have at hand in order to try to achieve the change that you want. I'm talking about people's skills and abilities, yeah? And so it's always good to have actions that are fun, that are exciting, that people enjoy, that leave a buzz in the people that participated in them, so they can come back to it. They want to do it again. They get hooked. You want to create actions that make an impact, and actions that really build power. So I'm talking about building power. I'm talking about building power for the group. I'm talking about building power for the community that you're working within, the group of people who are taking part within this action, but also where these individuals themselves are building power, are building their ability to lead, their ability to make change happen, or to change the course of events. And hopefully through these actions that you create, um, you will generate some change. And this change may be what you expected. Sometimes it's not what you expected. Sometimes you can have, just like with medicine, you can have side effects. You can have side effects with the change that you're trying to make. Um, And so you want to make sure that after all your actions, you always reflect. After your meetings, after every time you go out and listen, you always reflect. After you connect people, you always reflect on how it went, and so on. And when you after you take action and you've created some change, you want to sit down and reflect on where you're at, what power have you got now, and what is the next step in this. Rather than a circle, let's try and see this as a bit of a spiral. Okay, and so through this whole process, you must always have a reflective, you must work on your reflective practice. You must always be open to learning. You must always make sure that you and your group of leaders are accountable to the community you're working for and with. And you must make sure that there is lots of participation from as many players as possible. This is not, we're not talking about just activism. We're not talking about a small group of people just getting on with things and reacting to something um, uh, in a way which is not inclusive. When you're organizing, you want to make sure that you're inclusive. You want to make sure that you're building leadership. You want to make sure that you're listening to various parts of of the problem, the people affected, and in fact the people causing the problem. So, for example, in some cases when I worked in St. Paul's around issues to do with drug dealing, I haven't just listened to the people affected by the drug dealing. I've gone off to listen to the drug dealers themselves to try to understand. Because, for example, in the case of drug dealers, often you might find that they're actually the victims of a broader system of oppression. And the reason why they're dealing is not because they necessarily want to be doing that. They know it's dodgy. They don't all like it. They don't want to get arrested, right? But they do it because they must. And so the best thing to do is to try to listen to both sides. Okay, in fact, to all sides, including people who sit on the fence and just watch things happen. Um, to be an organizer, you must be a good listener. You must be very creative to try to really help people to come up with solutions. You must not tell people solutions. You must not lead people into taking actions that you've come up with yourself. You must let people come up with those actions. You could sometimes provide some ideas if you see people are stuck. Um, but this is all about the community itself leading and learning from its own mistakes. And the organizer plays the role of a devil's advocate. The organizer is a coach for leaders, for individuals. The organizer challenges people when the organizer sees that people's views need to be challenged. Even if you agree with that person, you must always be bringing in the views of others into the space. Try to create a more wholesome approach. An organizer is a networker, is someone who's always looking to connect people. An organizer is someone who's very sensitive to people's needs, so that if someone is having any particular emotional problems or any particular issues, you don't want to be pushing this organizing agenda onto them. You want to be really sensitive with people's situations. An organizer is someone who's got empathy and who helps to build empathy in others, to helps people to realize the importance of um, being aware of everyone else's reality. An organizer listens for facts, and an organizer listens for feelings, and tries to discern between facts and feelings when an organizer is listening to people. An organizer is someone who's very strategic, and is friends with right wingers and is friends with left wingers. An organizer is friends, it knows and connects with people who are from various polarized parts of society. Yeah, an organizer remains in the center, but not because the organizer doesn't care about one thing or the other, but because the organizer cares about connecting and cares about generating some sort of consensus amongst people. An organizer is someone who is always learning and realizes that nothing is perfect, in that we're always evolving, that there is always a better way to do things. So an organizer is always critically thinking about how to do things better, but at the same time, an organizer is someone who is always celebrating what has been done. So even if your campaign, even if the work that you've gone off to do, the actions that you've taken, haven't got you what you got or what you were after, an organizer always looks at what did we get from that? Which quite often is some learning, and learning can be quite powerful too. In terms of an organizer's skills and abilities, an organizer must be organized and record things. Make sure that when someone is going to take over from my role, ideally someone from the community whose door I knocked on, who I listened to initially, and got them involved and turn them into and help them to realize the natural leadership potential. Um, the organizer um, must be able to create new leaders, basically, to build the capacity of others and support others to eventually take his or her place. And that involves making sure that you leave a good trace, that you leave a good paperwork trace, and that you have your work very organized so that you can easily hand over to other people who are going to take over from you. An organizer must not get too involved in the details of the projects. That is for the people who you're organizing. What you're doing is you're having an overview of everything. So an organizer must have a systemic view, an ability to work systemically, and not get caught up in the detail. Have attention to detail. Don't get me wrong, but not get caught up in the detail. An organizer is someone who ideally, not always, but ideally, is aware of all the new trends happening in terms of tools for engagement, be it face to face or digital tools. An organizer is someone who's very curious. He's very curious about people's realities, but also about how things could be done differently. But most importantly, the most important thing of all is that an organizer is very aware of his or her own ego. And if we start there, we begin to see how sometimes we can be part of a problem, and we can begin to see how sometimes my ego may be what is getting on the way of people actually taking real ownership of the groups, of the projects that they've created. If we deal with our ego, we will be way ahead in the game. I hope you enjoyed this video and it helps you to understand the community organizing framework. If you'd like to find out more about the community organizing framework, please get in touch with Inside Hub. You can find us on www.insidehub.co. And my name is Jose Barco, and it's been a pleasure to do this little video for you. Thank you very much.